Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Star Wars Tales of the Bounty Hunters, edited by Kevin J. Anderson. This is a novella collection, part of the Tales of series. Kevin did 3 Tales of books. He did Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales of the Bounty Hunters, and then a third one, Tales of the Jabba's Palace. They did do 2 others. Other people edited 2 other collections. I'll get to those eventually. But for right now, I've read Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina, and now this is my review of Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina had 16 short stories. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them really bad, and some of them mediocre. And so I felt very mediocre on the book. I was like, had some good moments, had some bad moments. That's fine. I think the novella format, at least for me, works so much better. For one is the books are long, the novellas are longer than short stories and have time to breathe, and also it didn't feel repetitive very much. Mos Eisley Cantina tales felt very repetitive, and they were very much hemmed in on where they could be and what kind of story they could tell, whereas this was much more open. So whereas the average story in here was maybe 20 pages, sometimes less, the average story here was about 70 pages, and it was able to, the shorter ones were 60, but 60 to 70 pages, and they were able to tell such big stories. So there's 5 novellas one for each bounty hunter, although Zuckuss and Forlom are written together. So there's 6 bounty hunters, 5 stories, 5 authors. And so the book starts out with a novella about IG-88, and that one's actually written by Kevin J. Anderson. And that was a great story. The first story out of the gate is so good. Has some great action to it. It has some really interesting ideas about how the robots kind of started to uprise. It talks about how similar themes that Solo actually dealt with, although I think it's even done a little bit better here. And then the second half of this novella takes a turn, and IG-88 sets his goal on something that you would never believe if I told you out of pocket what it was. And so you need to read the story just to get what it is. But I was like, I cannot believe that Kevin got away with this. That's a big deal that he they let him put IG-88 in this situation that just completely changes the way I would view the movie. This is no longer canon, but you know what I mean. So that story I thought was really good. The second story is about Dengar, and that was by Dave Wolverton, and honestly, that was my favorite story in the collection. It was so good. The story about Dengar is, at the beginning of the story, he is sent on a bounty, and as part of that, he ends up rescuing this innocent girl/young woman. I think her age is a little bit, murky, but girl/young woman. And then it flashes forward some time, and she's certainly grown up a lot, and it's taking place during the events of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and Dengar is hunting down bounties and stuff, and he reconnects with the girl named Manaru, and it's just delightful. Their connection, their relationship is just delightful, and I loved the way that Dave wrote this story, and I thought it was just so cool. Then you had the third story in the collection, third novella, which is by Kathy Tyers, who I have liked. I thought that Truce of Crow was fine. I know people who don't like it, but I thought it was fine. And I loved Kathy Tyers' novel, Balance Point from the New Jedi Order. I love that novel. And so, I was hopeful. And unfortunately, this novella really felt flat. This is the novella about Bossk. And it's about Bossk. When he's trying to hunt down Han Solo and Chewbacca, he ends up having to work with another Wookiee. And as part of his crew, he kind of puts together a crew. And the Trandoshans and the Wookiees do not like each other because the Trandoshans hunt down Wookiees. And so the whole novella is about Bossk kind of trying to figure out how to work with this Wookiee even though he wants to hunt him down. And it just didn't work. I didn't think it was interesting. Like, the premise was kind of interesting, but it didn't really do enough for me, and the character writing wasn't as good, and so I didn't like that novella, unfortunately. Then you had the fourth novella, which is about Zuckuss and Forlom, and the two of them having to work together. And the plot of this novella was actually quite interesting because you see them having to go on this bounty that they're trying to do with Han and Chewbacca, However, they completely get sidetracked, and it completely changes the trajectory of their characters by the end. And I really like the trajectory that they went on, because it's just not what you would expect for them. But the interplay, and that was by M. Shane Bell, is the author. But the interplay between Zuckuss and Forlom was just flat and boring, and they had no personality, really. The people around them were interesting, but the two main characters of the novella were not interesting whatsoever. And so that novella kind of fell flat as well. So we had two great ones at the beginning, and two ones that I didn't particularly like. But then you had the final novella in here, which is by Daniel Keyes Moran, and that is the novella The Last One Standing, about Boba Fett. And it tells quite a long period of his life. It tells kind of his days before Episode 5, it tells some of his days during the whole Han Solo thing, and it tells of his days after Episode 5, after Episode 6 even. And there's actually a scene where, with him and Han before and him and Han after, that was really creative, and I was like, why are you telling this? This is Tales of Bounty Hunters. Why is Han taking up so much of this? I know that they're hunting him in the other ones, but in this one, Han's not being actively hunted for part of it. I'm like, why is Han a major character in this novella? And it made sense at the end, and I was like, that was a genius ending. So I really liked the Boba Fett story. It wasn't as much of a story that I loved compared with the first two stories about IG-88 or Dengar, but it was still a really good story. So you had two bad stories, one pretty good story, and then two great stories. And so that's actually a pretty good view in my book. Again, being in a novella format really helped it out, because none of the stories really overstayed their welcome, but none of them, I was satisfied with what I got from each of them. Whereas the Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, some of the stories were so boring that just 20 pages just was too much, and some of them could have been good if they were in full novellas, but they just couldn't get there. So I think it works. Tales of Bounty Hunters works much better. Also, Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina told the story of the cantina and the whole shootout with Greedo and the whole Stormtrooper stuff so many times, I was like, I'm ready to be done. This time, the story of on the Star Destroyer, where the bounty hunters, we don't need their scum, that Piet says, and then Lord Vader telling them about no disintegrations and stuff. That is in each of the 5 stories, but it's so short for all of them. It's like a page, maybe 2 or 3 pages at most for each of them. So the majority of the stories do not focus on that, they focus on other things, and so it never overstayed its welcome. Whenever I got to that sequence, I was like, all right, we're going to read it again, boom, we're done, let's keep going. And so I really liked that. I think Kevin learned from the first book that you need to space it out, and you need to or not space it out, but not hone in too much on that singular concept. So I really enjoyed this. I'll give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Overall, really enjoyed it. Dengar's story was the best, then the IG-88 story, then the Boba Fett story, and then the last 2 at the bottom. So if you've read this, let me know, what was your favorite story in here? What did you think of this collection? Do you agree with me that the novellas work better than short story collections? Let me know those thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.